now the big fight that we all OGs and people who care about security and self-sovereignty and freedom of speech and freedom to transact is to make sure that these bank secrecy laws don't start including every single human being with a hardware wallet.
Welcome to Decentralized Dawn, where lifelong friends Chicago and Disco navigate the ever-evolving crypto landscape. With genuine curiosity and a commitment to nuance as our North Star, we offer clear-eyed exploration. Our goal? To empower listeners with the tools and insights needed to flourish in this decentralized age.
How's it going, everybody? Another week, another huge batch of news and so much cool stuff going on. I'm in a much better mood this week, so that makes me happy too. And I had a half undrunk cup of coffee this morning. I drove my daughter to the bus and I forgot about it. And I will drink cold coffee. I do not care. When I forget and then remember that I have coffee to drink, to me, it's just a big win around lunchtime. Disco, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. So are you on a strict, like, 1 cup of coffee ratio? Like that's your limit per day?
Yeah, I'm always 1 cup a day, because if I go over, I don't know why this happens to me. I spike and then I crash like 45 minutes later, and the rest of the day is just like, I got a nap, which I'll do anyway, but I've got to nap more. And I just like, it doesn't work for me. Like this is to gets the engine turning. And once it's like the choke for me, you turn the choke off and the engine's humming and everything's fine.
Yeah, I myself find myself in the 1 cup of coffee camp, but I'm relatively newer to utilizing coffee in my day-to-day, and I've had to learn the hard way that if I get amped up on 2 or 3, 4 cups of coffee, the road down the hill is not worth the ride up the hill.
No, definitely not. And I think both of our personalities, like our minds, it doesn't take much for my mind to race. And I think that's why we're kindred spirits, because I know you're similar because I've known you my whole life. So yeah, 1 cup is definitely my limit. And then it kicks me, it jumpstarts me, and it just goes. It's even with drinking. Like, honestly, like I have no inhibitions at a party or anywhere. Like, sometimes it's fun to just tie one on, but like it sounds crazy. I just don't need to drink that much. I just don't.
Yeah. I think that it's something that is, you've been more in tune with over time. But for me, like, I'm trying to be more mindful and conscious and look at, how something's going to feel, a half hour after it's consumed, and what that's going to lead to. And I haven't really looked at things from that perspective. It's a newer kind of update to my software system, and it's really awesome. Like, it's good just to kind of think about it. I'll be like, oh, I really do like that spinach and artichoke dip. And then I'm going to be like all red faced and ready for a nap right afterwards. So is it worth it? And it's just part of the evolution. But to get to what you were saying earlier, it's like, it sounds like a cliche, but every time we plug in and we talk about doing a show and we get ready to go, it's like there's no lack of interesting and exciting developments to cover. So I'm excited to dig into the developments. This is our first post approval show, so it was kind of interesting. I'm kind of happy that we have that one memorialized, because we were sitting there and you were more solid in your belief that it was going to happen and that the world wasn't going to crumble down and that there'd be a rug at the end. But I was a little more nervous about it, but it was really exciting just to see it come to fruition.
Yeah, and I snuck in actually, but we were uploading the show, and right before I took it down and then just said the Bitcoin ETF is launched, only because I figured people would be like, well, this is such old news. Like, the world has changed now. And the funny thing is, has the world changed? It's so much has happened this week around that for me and Vanguard, and we'll get into that. But one I was right about that and probably not worrying, but what I was wrong about was that people were stockpiling and the stats were there. Remember last week how I said that I think it was 9.4% of the Bitcoin was on the exchanges and I'm sorry, it was 9.7 and it was 9.4 before that. So 0.3 doesn't sound like a lot, but it's quite a bit. And when it goes up, that means people are obviously looking to trade, looking to sell, and people did. We peaked. Did we hit 48? I think we did, and now we're back down in the. I should have it in front of me. We're in like the 40.
It's mid 42.
Yeah, so it really did correct. Is it a bad correction? No, and it actually worked out for me because I couldn't buy on Vanguard, but. Whoa, let's hit the brakes. We're getting way ahead of ourselves. So let's break all this down.
But that's a good point just to start with, because I know we were talking about what was going to be the initial reaction from a price perspective. We're now doing this show 4 days into actual trading of the ETFs, right, and it being available on
fourth trading day, right?
Yeah, and I just think that I was concerned. I've been on all sides of it. So once it got approved and went up, I definitely had that big morsel of, oh no, I don't have enough. I just don't have enough. I kind of wish there's a little dip. Oh God, and then I had this big kind of positive revelation, like, wow, it's not sinking to the point of, going down, 20,000 or this or that. So right. I hate to say that like a nothing burger to a degree on price and a slight dip is really good news, but where Disco sits, like, I think it's pretty amazing that you kind of withstood that whole thing. All these unknowns became known, and, there's still an opportunity to acquire at a somewhat decent rate, especially before the halvening. And that's kind of how I'm looking at it all.
Yeah, that's well put. And I definitely want to put more. And I actually got in a little bit of a scuffle with somebody. And I think it was on the, not a scuffle, but it was just like, we went back and forth and it was very above board, but he just kept saying like, just buy Bitcoin. Why do you need this ETF? And I just kept saying to him like, dude, like, well, it is, but we all have retirement accounts. We all have different types of accounts. And like, is it as good as holding your keys in your own Bitcoin? No, it's one step removed, but these ETFs are a 1-to-1 on Bitcoin bought, right? So to me, the tracks have been greased, and to be able to just put Bitcoin in any of the retirement accounts I want or whatever is just so seamless and easy. And everybody's fees are, at least out of the gate, everybody's fees are teeny. I know Fidelity's free or 0.25. I mean, 0.25 in ETF is nothing. I know ARCB, Kathy Wood's 21 shares, that one is free for the first 6 months, and then it goes to 0.25 or 2.1. So like very reasonable with ETFs, but Grayscale, I can't remember where they were before. It was a convoluted mess because it was a trust, but now we know they're at 1.5%. So they're basically saying that they're making a bet that people in the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust are going to be lazy and just keep it in there. And so far, they've been right. They've got 25 billion in assets. The next highest is iShares, which is BlackRock, obviously, right, at 707 million. And this was snapshotted yesterday, I believe. So, I mean, the number.
You got to look at the numbers. You got to look at the numbers, and maybe I'm off on this, but I think you have to look at the numbers. Is Grayscale had a big head start on it, right? Because they were already in the game. So to have 707 and 520, like the Bitcoin, the Fidelity, as well as BlackRock, like that's pretty significant.
100%.
It's like when you look at that, the 25, I think, just kind of skews it, the Grayscale side of it. And if that wasn't in the game and it was really just new entrants completely, it'd kind of be a different narrative.
Yeah, and for those, we always have to respect those listening and not looking. The Grayscale Bitcoin Trust has been, or GBTC has been around for years. I was in it for a long time, got out a while ago, but they were at about 26 billion in holdings, I think, when all this launched, maybe 27 billion. So now everybody else is playing catch up. So a big narrative in these first 3 days of the Bitcoin ETFs, all 11 getting approved, was, well, is there a net inflow, or is it just smart people getting out of Grayscale Bitcoin Trust and going to the low, going from 1.5% fee to one of the 0.25 or free for first 6 months or whatever fee. So we've seen the total outflows for 3 days of Grayscale at 1.17 billion. So now they're down to 25.5 billion. And again, that flowed into, number one was BlackRock at 710 million inflows for the first 3 days. Fidelity at 524 million. Bitwise at 305 million, and then fourth Arc at 227 million. So overall, these ETFs, and in aggregate, they say that just one of these ETFs is trading more than all the other ETFs combined. So that's how big this market is. So right now in the first 3 days, we've seen, like I said, about $1 billion out of Grayscale into the others. But if you take the overall net, the net inflow was positive at 803 million in. So that means Grayscale lost $1 billion, but the other ones gained about $1.8 billion or $1.9 billion. So the net is 800 million in new money, and not just people going from Grayscale to the other. So that in itself, 800 million in 3 days, is massive. And I mean, we could go on and on forever. But we haven't even seen the institutions. We haven't seen, it's going to take so much time for people to come in. But now the tracks are greased. Any retirement account, I assume a pension, as long as they get approval, anybody has access to these 11 ETFs. It's beautiful. Hallelujah.
Well, I hate to say, everybody has access, because there were a couple of houses that didn't really have any candy at the door when people wanted to trick or treat to get in on the ETF. One quick question I had that came up when you were talking about looking at the why, what's better, holding it, self custody and everything, which is the kind of the ultimate view for purists and everything. But my question to you is this: in light of seeing in December, there was a little bit of a shiver down the collective spine when people saw a potential vulnerability within the Ledger network, right? So do you think that the ETFs are more secure potentially than self-custody, or do you still think that self-custody? But I was just wondering, maybe technically you might have a little bit of a safety net if you're going through an ETF that's involved with this. So that was just a question that came up. I haven't even thought about it prior to this conversation.
It's a really interesting question. You're not holding the underlying asset here. You are holding, literally a digital piece of paper saying that you have a share or shares of one of these ETFs. So you're not holding it. But that said, assuming our financial system stays whole and true and all that stuff. Yeah. I mean, if you've got good 2FA not going through your cell phone, and, the obviously the brokerage houses are as secure as you can get for Web 2, and you also have insurance backed on that. Somebody would literally have to trade out and then transfer it to their own account. So is it foolproof? No, but is it as safe as we've come to expect before the crypto era? Yes. Because, I mean, you got to remember with crypto too, think about how many people have lost their keys, or I mean, there's a million things that could go wrong. Or if somebody, knock on wood, dies, can their heirs get it? What if you have a multi-sig? And I am not here saying don't do any of those things. I think self-custody and holding your own Bitcoin, to me, is a rite of passage. And I think it's that self-sovereignty to me is as important as like freedom of speech. It's freedom to hold what you want on in your mind, on your person, however it is. Obviously it works differently. So I will always be 100% advocate for that. But we've all been using, most of us have some sort of retirement accounts or something. And this, I feel safe with the places I invest in. Now, hopefully I never have to eat those words, but I think it's pretty damn safe.
And that kind of leads to like the next battle or the next, thing for the integrity of, Satoshi and things from that perspective, which is there's kind of this battle coming up of the acceptance of Bitcoin and potentially other, currencies and things like that being mainstreamed, adaptable through potential ETFs or whatever it may be. And while that can be a very big step forward for the growth and the acceptance of the space, the vigilance to be able to do the self-custody and to keep our eyes on those elements and advocate for that is more important than ever. So it doesn't just get glossed over with the corporatization of the assets.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Disco. That is now that finally in the biggest financial market in the world, we've got these Bitcoin ETFs, and hopefully ETH ETFs will come soon. We'll talk about that in a bit. But yeah, now the big fight that we all OGs and people who care about security and self-sovereignty and freedom of speech and freedom to transact is to make sure that these bank secrecy laws don't start including every single human being with a hardware wallet or literally a piece of paper, or you memorize it. I mean, it's absurd that could even happen. And right now with the divided Congress, I don't think it's on the table. But, if you get I don't want to say on the Democratic side, but right now, the Democrats are in general more anti-crypto. But I'll just say from a crypto stance, if you get a bunch of them anti-crypto, the name of the bill talks about one of those things that we all care deeply about, like protecting our children or whatever, like,
right.
So that's obviously that's manipulative. And what they're really doing is making sure that the TradFi system controls the crypto system as much as possible. I think in the long run, that's almost impossible because Bitcoin doesn't care about any of this. Bitcoin just is. And through people getting obsessed by it and through people seeing that it's a low inflationary hedge against the US and the global TradFi financial system, that it spreads itself almost organically. So again, any congressperson or anyone who passes laws, you're just screwing the people, your citizens. So, that's the fight we have to continue to focus on and to be proactive on, because right now it's not a threat, but if it is, we have to be fully prepared to stand up for our rights. Because remember, all the normies that come in, like look how many people in crypto who are already in crypto, they don't even care about privacy. They don't even care about self-sovereignty. You start talking about that on Twitter and they just care about their bags and their NFTs. And it is what it is. I was going to say it's sad, but it is what it is. It's just like in any organization you're in, 5% of the people are doing 93% of the volunteering, always begging everyone else to get involved. And that's just kind of how life is. It's like the 93-7 rule instead of the 80-20 rule. Like few people do a lot. So we have to have an outsized voice here. And I think that's why 6529 is so brilliant, because it took me a while to be in this space to figure it out, but Seize the Memes, he didn't accidentally stumble on that. He realized the quickest way to communicate with people is through imagery and short sentences. And obviously there was a lot of very nasty, evil cultures in the past who were very good at that stuff to manipulate society and
Yeah.
stuff like that. But this is using it, in my opinion, to manipulate it, for good. That's why some of those 6529 memes, like some of those early ones, like the Satoshi one and the the Pepe pilot, like they're timeless because like once you understand that, it's like a rally cry, and it shows you how important it is and how much we have to stand up for what we believe in.
Yeah. Amen. And it's, as we are talking right now, there's a courtroom going on with the SEC and Coinbase, and it is a follow up, or it's the kind of the hearing based on a complaint that was lodged, years ago. And there's a chance that the judge could dismiss it, and it's tied to the 13 or so tokens that were considered. They're trying to see how to categorize them, if they're securities or not, and all that. So
Right.
that's flying. That seems to me like it's kind of flying somewhat under the radar right now. That you have the SEC and Coinbase having a face off in a courtroom in, I believe, Manhattan right now over something that's very, very important. And if it did end up going the way of dismissal, it could potentially be as big, if not bigger, news than what happened last week with the ETF approval. So we got to keep our eyes on that. And if any
Wow,
news
that's a
comes out,
big statement.
yeah, well, think about it, because you're then talking about all these other securities, and some of them are, big players right now. You're talking about Solana's in there, and
Right.
Cardano and all that. So it's significant in terms of what it could represent. And I think that every single time you have the SEC and a crypto agency going head to head, every single time that there could be some deadening to the SEC's armor is really important. And I think that not enough is made of the fact that those previous kind of court cases that the SEC lost really kind of led to, kind of Gensler losing some of his bravado and footing, and ultimately having to acknowledge that this is a new movement, and it needs to, while it's different and it's easy for people to have narratives about it being misunderstood
Right.
and we don't get it, it's very powerful and it's very legitimate in terms of what it offers. So I love that there are some, kind of deadening of the firm, all this of, oh no, we're the authority. And it's like, are you really? Like, is this really even under your jurisdiction? So I think all these are really important things to watch.
Yeah, well, good point. The SEC is clearly overstepped, and losing that last court case obviously opened the doors for the ETF that has come out. But these arbitrary decisions that they're enforcing something. Again, like Gary Gensler to me just seems like he's just a puppet, right? There are
Yeah.
larger forces, I think, in the government who are, whether it's the Secretary of Treasury or coming right from the executive office, who knows? But there's clearly in the executive office and in that branch, there's an anti-crypto narrative going on. And the most frustrating thing is just hearing the same lies over and over, that it's only used for trafficking and terrorist groups, and that's simply not the case. I mean, it's been proven that under 1% of the funds get used for that. And obviously, like I said, no percent is a good percent, but cash is 2 or 3%. So like it's to me, I feel like where the government overreaches is now that there are all the tools out there and all our transactions are digital and through banks and through credit cards, because they have the access to it, they want more and more access. But in the history of mankind, like you couldn't, and humankind, you couldn't track every transaction. And, that's how it should be. People, obviously, if people are doing stuff illegal, then the powers that be should track that down and find them. But that doesn't mean you get to surveil every single person in the United States to do so, and it's against our rights, and people need to know those rights with the First, Second, and Fourth Amendments.
Yeah, which really does go back to what we were saying a second ago. Like the right to self custody and everything like that is really, really, really important, because if it infiltrates in, then things can get, turned off from different systems, and it'd be good to be able to have your own access. So it does. I see both sides of the argument. I see what you're saying completely in terms of if you already have funds that are in a system and you're now able to deploy those towards something that you believe in and you think has, a lot of growth and a lot of positive potential. Good, that's good for everybody to be able to do that. But I do also understand the purists in the basement, keep it self-custody. Why would you do that? So it's an interesting dichotomy to watch.
Yeah. Have you seen a lot of noise out there about people just saying, I know that the noise I heard was that the ETF, once the TradFi takes it over and the big mega whales come in and the institutions and the hedge funds and the big banks and the brokerage houses, once they come in, it manipulates Bitcoin and stays untrue. But to me, it's like you can always hold the underlining. I guess for me, it's like you can do both. I can't take part of my retirement portfolio and grab a portion of it and then go buy the underlying. I just can't. Legally, I can't do it. It comes out of the IRA and then I get a fee. So why not hold it in there? And I'm going to admit something to you, and I've thought about this. Because I can buy this is horrible. This is degen, but because
let's hear it.
Yeah, because I can buy Bitcoin through an ETF in there, if I have more holdings there, maybe with my real Bitcoin, I could hold more ordinals and NFTs. And I know
I knew it was coming. It's a different wallet. Yeah.
Probably pretty stupid.
Well, who utilizes staking as a way to like crocodile arm your way to not get to your wallet.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a good speed bump, and it's crazy. How exciting, just watching this ordinal stuff too. So it's just, there's so many good things and interesting things developing, and it's almost hard to focus a show because there's just so many interesting roads to go down. But I think the net of, more people being able to have access to it that we've been talking about for months at this point is really exciting. And then just seeing that it kind of came out and didn't, hockey stick one way or the other, I think is pretty exciting. I do think it was interesting, just to go back to Gensler really quick. I do think it's awesome and interesting that he ended up voting to approve the ETF. And if you looked at the 5 votes or whatever, his kind of was the decider. So I don't know enough about the inner workings of the SEC. And as we say, who has influence here or there or whatever, there's people, of the mindset that Larry Fink pretty much got that vote, from Gensler in place. And, he kind of had to approve it, but then, kind of not really disapprovingly approve, I guess is kind of how it came across.
Yeah, it certainly shows you that maybe the big billionaire mega whales like the Finks of the world, like, hey Gary, like hold my lunch, who knows? And maybe that even shows you, like with the executive branch and the big money brokers and power brokers in this world, like who's in control, and the fact that you bring up a very good point though, the fact that it was a 3-2 vote and that what was it, Chambers? What's that woman's name? But the dissenting opinion was just like disagreeing with the courts. It's like, great, you could disagree with the courts, but what is your role in and Hester Peirce, God bless her, was like, not only should have this been approved, this should have been approved 10 years ago. We
Exactly.
did a disservice to investors and to innovation. And I mean, her quotes go on and on. It's just, I hope that she is the next SEC commissioner. How Treasury Secretary, how awesome would that be? It's not like she's this unreasonable Bitcoin maxi. She believes in innovation, and she knows that Bitcoin is a good hedge. I think to finish the Bitcoin section is, what people forget is we now have in the TradFi system a 1-to-1 hedge against inflation.
Kind of a hedge against the system. That's what's so ironic about it. It's like you can technically not necessarily bet against the system, but to a degree get a position that would be, positive in light of potential, deterioration of the existing system. So that's kind of a
Yeah.
interesting.
But you don't even have to bet against the system to believe in Bitcoin. You're betting against, I mean, inflation is a tax. I think inflation is the most hidden, insidious tax because your hard work, money is just energy stored. So let's say you worked your butt off in your 20s and 30s in corporate America, made a bunch of money, and you're fairly frugal, you want to save for a house or kids' college or whatever. You want to have that money retain as much value as possible. Now, obviously people do that by investing in the stock market with stocks and bonds, but at some point, if you can't keep up with inflation, posted inflation and real inflation are obviously two different things because your basket and my basket are totally different. If I have an electric car, gas isn't that important to me, but obviously energy costs and electricity costs in my home are. Both of us obviously eat food. That's the basket that, appeals to everybody, but everybody's basket is totally different. So inflation is different for every single household, and the manipulation of that inflation basket, they're changing it all the time to massage the numbers to how they want. That basket, I think, has changed. I heard like over 10 or 20 times since like the 1980s. Like, it's just absurd. Like you can't even have a standard basket. I would argue like either rent or mortgage, gas, and food. And I'm pretty sure even food is not included. Like there's some things that aren't included. You're like, so the staples of life basically aren't even that well represented. Hey, but TV sets are getting cheaper every year and they're getting bigger. Yay for TVs,
Which I don't need.
Right. Like how many more?
I got it. Like I'm good, dude. Like I don't need it. It was like, there was like that peak when it was like, ooh, they're curving and it went into HD. Like that was kind of the last big push
6K. Like 4K,
but
2K was pretty good,
Yeah, it's kind of like the iPhones, right? Like they got to the point where, you had the generations, oh, I got to get the 6, I got to get the 7. And now it's like, I got to get a new phone. I guess I'll get the 15 because it's what's out there.
No innovation there. Yeah, it's funny with the iPhone. I actually did just get a new one. I had an 11 Pro and it wouldn't, the little thing in the charging cable, it never fit well, but it just got worse and worse and it couldn't charge. And then I had to just do the magnetic charging, but the 11 doesn't have the magnet on the back, so it wouldn't stick. So I'm like, so I got a phone out of pure necessity, but innovation wise, like using this, like it's no better. Apple is definitely, they've got their walled garden, they've got their users, and to switch, like who's going to start over with all their little niche apps to run their lives in their homes? Like who wants to start over and download all those again? Like that's, the switching costs are too high. But anyway, maybe this Vision Pro will be cool. Yeah,
that's what I was going to ask you about, because my son was on some list and he's like, we can get it if you want. And I was sitting there thinking about it. I'm like, I don't know, like he's like, I would keep it boxed, and wouldn't use it, and probably would go up over time. But I don't know if there's like a big clamoring to use it, because what are you going to use it for? Like we don't know yet. So and that goes to also, hopefully it can make a big play or help with what we've kind of been talking about with the experience and more of the metaversy stuff in terms of being able to display art in cool ways and interface with it and stuff. So more to see on that for sure. But I'm not dying to get a new phone. I don't think there's any status or swag anymore if you have the 15 or the 14. It's almost like, dude, why do you need that? There's nothing new that's all that great about it.
Yeah, I don't think anybody cares. But if am I gonna get a Vision Pro? I mean, we develop apps for a living, and I would say we did not pre-order them. What are they? $3,000 for the base unit?
Like 3,500, I think. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's starting at a high price, I think is smart. They're trying to hit the work marketplace first, but I'm sure they'll do a good job with it, and it will iterate. It's like the Apple Watch. At first, they were worthless. I only use the Apple Watch only when I'm on the golf course to get the distance yardage, because it just makes it so much easier. Just look at your wrist to be like, and whack, so you get to chill there, put your score in if you really want to, or be like Ty Webb and don't even keep score. But, I think the Apple Watch to this day is still, to me, this is my opinion, it's just like one more thing tracking you, following you around. Like, do you really want your heartbeat and all your vitals and everything out there. Just to me, it seems invasive and unnecessary. Like if I want to see a text, I will look at my phone. If I don't want to see a text, it will remain in my pocket.
I'm on the fence, and I'm at a, I don't know, I would say precipice, but I don't even know if that's the right word. I'm at a decision making time where it's like, I was like, am I now like accountable to this phone, and do I or to my watch, and do I really want to have to be accountable? Because it'll give you like little warnings like, hey, you can still do it. You know, you can move more today. It's like, dude, I know I can, but I did this, that, or the other. You know, I don't really need to check in with you. And you're right. You know, you get the alerts. It's like, dude, okay, so I may be moving on from it myself, because I don't.
But
Really
I even
like
turn all alerts off on my phone. I don't have sounds or bleeps. Like I've got a buddy who's like getting news and stock updates. He'd be like, how do you live without having alert? I'm like,
yeah.
My phone's at the mercy of my decisions, and I'm already addicted to it like the rest of us. Like I don't need it to be squawking at me. So I turn, except for like timers and reminders and calendar appointments, like I don't let it push my email. I go into email, and then it takes like 10 seconds, but it loads all the emails in, because I'm going to look at my email at my time. I'm not going to look at email on anyone else's time.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Look, I took it off. This conversation made me take it off. I don't need the shackles. I don't need to know about these spam emails or these offers that I didn't ask about interrupting me when I'm doing this or that.
Unsubscribe. I mean, how many lists are you on? Like,
I know. And then something, my number got exposed somewhere, because I've just been inundated with freaking scam calls over the past 5 days. I was like, something, and so is my wife, and it's just like, oh, someone's got our number.
Oh, but you have the checkbox for silence unknown numbers, don't you? Disco.
No,
God,
I don't.
Boomer.
All right, fine.
So remember, I'm in Gen X. Disco's a boomer. There is a setting. Go into settings under phone, and it's silence unknown callers. And yes, you might miss a call from someone important, or if you're expecting an important call, yes, flip it back on just for that. Otherwise, keep it off, and it will silence everything. Most don't leave a message. I get
But what if it's that important solicitation, that's that opportunity, or what if I really owe the government $10,000 I didn't know about?
Okay, you're being sarcastic. I was like, yeah. Turn it off. Yeah, silence unknown callers is probably your best friend on the iPhone. So definitely flip that on to silence them immediately, and only flip it off when you need it. Like, if you called your bank and then they're calling you back in 45 minutes, or American Airlines, they'll call you back in 7 hours and 45 minutes. Just flip it off so you can hear it. Otherwise, yeah, just keep that on, and it will make you guys like, I think peace of mind in this modern era is like, and you beating to your own drum and not the drum of everything that's going on out there. It's ready for you. Like it's not like I don't check my phone way too much anyway. I don't allow it to check me.
I think my takeaway from this is that you can be deliberate in your interactions, whereas if you're not deliberate in the interactions, they can inundate in ways you didn't expect and end up taking up way too much space in your life.
Yeah, they get your headspace, and then you don't have time to do the things you want. So, and I've got buddies who are way better at that than I am, but that's a start. Like they have iPhone cases where, you basically have like HD staring at you at all times. So it actually blocks the camera and the front there and the back. Like there's all sorts of cool stuff you can do with that if you really get into it. But
let me ask you this really quick. Please. It's something that just came to my mind on this. Is it completely ironic and boomery to put a seed phrase in a safe deposit box at a bank?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know if I could answer that one. I
Yeah.
assume
I'm
that's
thinking about it myself. I was like, well, if there was a fire or whatever, it's like I'd have it at the bank so I could go, pull it from there. And then I was
do
like,
you not have plates?
no, I don't have plates. And I was like, why
Oh,
would I do that if I,
my disco. It's like, I feel like these last 17 episodes, we speed ran everything and you don't have some of the basics down. Get a seed plate, a fireproof seed plate. Yeah, don't. But as far as the Social Security box, I assume those things are safe, but I don't know. But I also assume that somebody through the back there has access to them too. So I've never heard of that stuff getting stolen or confiscated, but I feel like in that gold era there was, yeah, like you'd have to look into that. I don't know. I personally wouldn't keep it there, but I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I don't know.
okay. More to follow on that, folks.
Yeah, but definitely get a seed plate for sure.
So getting back to the Bitcoin, is there anything, they ran some ads and I don't know, it's interesting to look at how it's going to be positioned to, retail and consumers moving forward from, being Bitcoin. And it's also interesting to see it from, the Super Bowl of 3 years ago, where every other ad was for a different exchange and all that. So it's like the public, doesn't want to see Matt Damon, talking about the stuff anymore, and, Larry David and all that stuff. And, half of those were for FTX if you really look at it. So
I think most of them weren't they? I don't think Coinbase or Kraken ever did heavy advertising at all. I think that was all FTX, if I'm not mistaken.
It was a lot of
Larry
FTX.
David, Matt Damon, and Tom Brady were the three I remember. I don't even remember the Tom Brady ad. I just know he was heavily involved. But
yeah, I don't remember. And it's probably just been blocked out of my mind because I don't want to remember fortune favoring the brave and everything like that. But it's interesting to see how they're going to, now kind of repolish off Bitcoin and come back and explain to folks that it's something to invest in.
Yeah, it's interesting. So Bitwise, I'll play this one. So
You know what's interesting these days? Bitcoin.
Cut. What if we get him?
I would say of the three, that's the best one. So
You know
for
what's
those
interesting
who
these
are
days?
listening, that was
Bitcoin.
the most interesting man in the world. So at least
Look for
they're
Bitwise,
going
my
for it.
friends.
The other ones, in my opinion, the commercials weren't very appealing. And maybe I'm too much of a crypto, I don't want to say insider, but I've been in it so long. Maybe they don't appeal to me, but they're very plain and boring. Like, give it a little spice, but maybe the FTX stuff, everyone wanted to mute it down and just say like, hey, this is a good investment vehicle. Go get it.
Yeah, it's interesting because they don't say crypto. They don't really explain Bitcoin. They're just kind of like getting the name back out there, right? There was no real call to action or anything out of that ad. Looking back from like someone who, was in the periphery of the ad business and everything, it's like, what's the call to action? What's the point of that? So if it's just general awareness about the name Bitwise or whatever it is, it doesn't really hit that hard, and it's not that big a differentiator at this point. So it'll be interesting if somebody comes up with a really slick or, informative ad, but it seems like it's really just kind of normalize and reintroduce the term to kind of the masses.
Yeah, it's a good, very good point. I didn't even think of that. So this ad is not top of funnel. This is like mid funnel ads. It's basically saying, hey, you're going to do your research on Bitcoin on your own. We're not going to sit here and try and convince you of Bitcoin, because normies obviously have seen it go up, seen it go down. They most probably got burned at the wrong time if they actually got in buying it peak FOMO, right? So This is coming in mid funnel, basically saying like, hey, we're doing a fun ad. We're saying Bitcoin, and when you're ready, Bitwise. So
Yeah.
that's a good point, and that makes this ad even better, I think, because the ARC one was like text messaging, and it was kind of the same thing. It was a very light touch, like, isn't Bitcoin a scam? Like the texts were going back and forth, be like, I don't, it's too risky, and the other person's like, well, maybe you can't afford not to at least take another look at it. So it's causing that doubt. And go ahead.
It hits on FOMO. The ARC one hits on the FOMO element, and then ends with the "Aren't you a bit curious?" which is, a unique play on words and play on terms. So
Right.
I just think I don't think people really have a great handle on what they're trying to accomplish just yet. And again, we're 4 days in, so it's all pretty much in its complete infancy. And I think that it'll be just interesting to see. We kind of have seen in the 4 days, kind of the differentiation of the 11 or so that got approved. And we're kind of seeing a little bit of, who's rounding the curve first. And, would you say that any of the results are, from that perspective, significantly surprising? Because I don't really think so. It's kind of seems how it was going to play out from before.
Yeah, no, you're right. The big, I mean, obviously, looking at the chart again, of the new guys, BlackRock is number one at 710 million, Fidelity number two. Both of those companies manage trillions of dollars. So there's no surprise there. Fidelity obviously made it very easy to get it. They've been very Bitcoin and crypto forward for years. I think Bitwise, that one was a little surprising to be at 305, but they also have been on I think they went for the homegrown crypto enthusiasts. They were on every Bitcoin podcast getting their name out there. It's funny because I always skip the ads, and I didn't realize that until one of the podcasters pointed it out. But so Bitwise, I guess, is kind of the homegrown hero. But, Kathy Woods has also been into Bitcoin for years and years. And ARC 21 shares rounds out number 4. So interestingly, in the 3-day flow, again, you go 710 million BlackRock, 524 Fidelity, 305 Bitwise, 227 million ARC, and then you go to 17 million Van Eck, right? So there's a huge drop off from the first 4, not including great GBTC, obviously, which is way number 1 now. But the top 4 are head and shoulders above the others. A lot of people think some of these will go away. Yeah. I don't know what it costs to run an ETF, a 1-to-1 ETF. To me, it doesn't seem like you'd need a big team. You don't have any stock pickers. It's literally, you just have to execute.
There's not a ton of strategy.
There's none, right? So the management fees seem to be tiny, especially if you're already, you've got the custodial fees, which is mostly Coinbase, but we've learned that those fees are pretty minimal for Coinbase. They say even though they're the custodian of I think 8 or 9 of these 11, almost all of them, that isn't going to even make it bigger than retail Bitcoin purchases, on its own exchanges. Let's take a look at that over time. I find that hard to believe that cut over billions of dollars wouldn't add up. It's like the movie Office Space, where the guy's like, we'll just, from every transaction, we just grab 2 pennies. And he's like, dude, you put the decimal in the wrong spot. And it had $4 million in 3 days. And thus the whole building catches fire.
And we've got a little shout out to Mike Judge. The dude's humor has been on point for quite a while. Yeah,
he definitely nailed it with Silicon Valley and Office. I mean, Office Space is probably... Yeah. It's probably one of the best understated comedies in the last
satire,
20 or 30 years. Really... Yeah, exactly. And satire is my favorite. I was never a big King of the Hill fan, but Silicon Valley, I loved. It got a little crappier towards the end, even though they were talking about crypto, I think, in that last season.
Yeah, they were talking about the decentralized internet the whole time. Was, they had some stuff there for sure. Just as a quick follow. A quick follow to what you said, I was expecting, and I'm not a stock picker as evidenced by this, but I was expecting there to be a bump in Coinbase overall from the approval just to the custodian and, kind of the opening up of crypto markets, but the stock's been down ever since, and it's at like 132 right now. So it didn't give any sort of bump, and I would have been dead wrong if I tried to make a big play that way.
Yeah, interestingly, I mean, Bitcoin went from, it peaked at 47, 48 grand, and now it's down to 42.5 or something like that. And so people were pre-buying and selling the news, right? And obviously it tells us too that a lot of these companies probably had been lining up to pre-buy for a while. So I think it's going to take time, but I feel pretty confident going in and just like parking some assets that aren't being used in stocks and bonds in Bitcoin as a hedge, just like gold. So it makes me happy, but I'm going to tell you now which one. So, oh God, we haven't even talked about Vanguard yet.
I know.
So
I know.
Oh my God. So there's so much to talk about today. So should we jump into that?
Yeah, let's go. There's no holding
All right.
back.
So unless you're under a rock, Vanguard did not allow people to buy any of these ETFs on launch day, and they're still not. And their position is basically like, nope, we don't believe in it. We're not doing it. So Chicago here, or Blue Toshi as I'm calling myself now, I have funds at Vanguard, and I didn't have them at other places. I think Vanguard, I think Merrill Lynch, UBS, but Vanguard was by far the elephant in the room who just simply didn't allow trade. I guess Beto, which one is that? One of them was still working, and even GBTC, you used to be able to make that trade if you signed a bunch of like, I'm throwing my money away waivers with them. And they apparently, when all these went live, they got rid of that. So I called them 3 days before. I said, if this gets approved, will I be able to buy one of these Bitcoin ETFs through Vanguard? And she said, let me check with my boss. She went and checked with her boss and the trading desk, came back to me like 5-6 minutes later, happily waiting on hold. And she said, yes, if they are approved, we will sell them. So basically, that we know that was a super impulsive decision that they made. They've always been very negative, anti-crypto, but they said they would do it. So that morning, I'm all excited. It's approved. So the next, I was obviously after market hours. So that next morning, last Thursday, I went in to nibble a little in a retirement account, just buy a little, I'll tell you what I got in a second. And it said, oh, it's not active. I'm like, oh, well, these just came live this morning. It was 8:41. I'm like, it's only been 11 minutes. Maybe there's some settling thing. So I called them, and I called twice because the first time I don't lose my head often. The first one, the way it was delivered to me, the guy was like, oh yeah, our policy is, basically like, no, we're not going to approve it. And I was like, and I just went off on him. And then I'm like, I know it's not your decision, but you guys are morons. And then I'm like, so sorry for yelling, and I hung up. I was so mad because I felt like it was all about to go up, and I wanted to park some of that there. Then I got a cooler head 6 minutes later. I called back, and she explained to me more. She goes, yeah, our policy, for an indefinite amount of time, Vanguard has no plans to approve the trading for its customers of any of these Bitcoin ETF assets. So I was like,
and just to jump in, that is memorialized in the previous week's show, because you said in the show, hey, I called, I'm all good. I made sure that they're going to let me be able to buy it. So that's on the record. The other thing that's really, I came across and I thought was really weird is Vanguard owns, they're the second biggest holder of MicroStrategy. So that's just another odd thing in this whole thing. Like, they do invest in, right? So the whole thing just doesn't add up, but continue with the story, because I like how it's going. It was, by the way, for everyone listening, like, if you weren't on crypto Twitter that day, like, it just took on a life of its own. This entire kind of narrative of what is going on with Vanguard, how are they blocking this? So it wasn't just Blue Toshi who was dealing with this. It was all over the place where people were like, I can't believe that the gates are closed.
Yeah, it was. I was not alone. We were pissed, and every big Twitter handle out there, I piled on, and I'm like, because they said, we're hearing that. I'm like, as fast as I could type, can confirm, like, cannot get Vanguard. And I was so angry. The silver lining is Bitcoin has dropped 5,000. And my accounts just got, so I basically that day, called another, big brokerage house that does allow it. And I made sure I called them and they allow it, and it just settled. It took about a week. So today's Wednesday. Yeah. So it took like 6 or 4 trading days, if you will. Right. And it's already all over in this new account. I moved, some of my bigger holdings away from Vanguard, and I'm going to do all of them. I'm not going to keep anything with Vanguard anymore because of this. And this morning, I got my first little, I'm going to dollar cost average in, but with some cash I was holding, I dollar cost averaged in to one of these
Drum
ETFs.
roll.
Can you guess which one it was?
ARC 21.
Yes, but it was not for the reason that you think. And this is kind of interesting. I just looked at this. Do you know why I picked ARC 21? I already had said I was going to pick it, so I was already leaning towards them. But do you know what solidified it for me?
I don't think it's the fees as much. I thought that it was more kind of supporting, Kathy's ethos and alignment with, kind of the space overall. But I don't know what this other factor could have been if it wasn't that.
Yeah, so this is really interesting. The other factor is that all of the ETFs prices, I'm going to hold my phone up, but I'll explain it to anyone out there. Basically, here's some of the bottom ones, but here's Bitwise, ARC, and the iShares, these bottom 3. So basically, what do you see there? So iBit's $24.97, ARCB's $42.66. That's $42.66 a share. And then BITB is $23.28 a share. So what does that say to you?
I don't understand what that represents, because I thought that it would be in direct alignment with the price. So
exactly.
I have no understanding of that.
So which one of those 3 though is actually pretty ingeniously in alignment with the price?
Put it back up. I couldn't see which it was lying to. Whatever's in the 42.
Yes. So ARC is 1-1.
So they're actually legit 1-to-1 representing what it is. So
1-to-1. Well, it's $42.66 versus $42,660. Right. But I'll have to look this up. But it's the only of the 11 that I believe is on a factor of 10 ratio. So when you're looking at your portfolio, you're like, oh, my iShares are, like it doesn't make any sense. My iShares are worth $24.32. Like, so then you have to only compare it to itself. Whereas ARC was smart enough to be like, wait, let's do a factor of 10. I can't believe everybody didn't do this. It's kind of an unsung,
that's a win.
Say unsung hero, but that's a huge win. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a long-term win. Cause number go up, we're all hoping, right? And it's just, you at least know where it's easy to understand your position, right? So it just makes a heck of a lot more sense than seeing. There was one at $7. Like, what is that?
Yeah, look, so we've got, so Wisdom Tree, which is even weirder. Wisdom Tree and Van Eck are close, but they're at 45 and 48. Disco's putting his glasses on. Blue Toshi's already got his glasses on. But yeah, this is ARC is the only one that's close. It's actually more annoying, like Wisdom Tree and Van Eck. Like, why would you be close? Like, that's even more annoying. So I bought ARC because a little detail in planning this is actually a net plus. I don't have to do math. Be like, well, clearly BlackRock's is, you just divide by 2
we're running 25%
6.
under. Like, yeah, we're running 25% under. Like, it's so stupid.
But it's more like 33.9%. Like, you can't even 25%. You could maybe do the math, but like, yeah, give me one. So the net is ARK is, I believe, 1/1000th, right? So multiply 42 by 1,000 and you get 42,000. So I'm in.
Wow.
So I thought that was an interesting little detail that others clearly missed. And maybe just looking at it today, it just happened to be that way. But I don't think so, because I think I looked the other day and that's when this little seed got planted. So just like sometimes the devil's in the details. So I would say Van Eck probably won with the ticker name HODL. That's a huge win, but they're way low on the charts. So I think Fidelity was the other one I was looking at, but again, their price is at 37. So I'll be like, wait, is Bitcoin down to 37,000? No, it's not. So don't want to belabor, but I thought that was an interesting point. And I got my first part of my ETF, and I got to say, when I bought it, it was
Did you get a warning size?
I did. I had to sign this disclaimer, and I had to reclassify myself. I actually consider myself a fairly conservative, probably too conservative investor. And it made me go into, it was the 6th one, it was the bottom. It was like ultra risk on or something. I was like, okay, well, that's what you call it. That's not what I call it. So, and I had to sign a disclaimer, and I don't blame Fidelity, but I'll sign something. They're just saying like, hey, like, you lose, not our problem. Fine. I don't care. As long as I can buy it.
Yeah, that's wild. It'll be interesting, obviously, to see the longer tail of Vanguard and, if the people jumping ship. It seemed, at least from the kind of the Twitter sort of side of things, that the switch for a lot of folks was from Vanguard to Fidelity. So I don't think you were the only one who kind of took that bridge over to there. But it'll be interesting to see if Vanguard holds their posture on that. And who knows, maybe it works out for them, maybe it doesn't, but it'd be nice to see, a little bit of pain inflicted on that, and to see Fidelity enjoy some upside for being friendlier. And frankly, if this theory on the ARK is true, then, if there was something kind of a rooting interest, I too would root for that to kind of be the one that really kind of builds and prevails in the long run, because of the more long-term commitment and belief in the space and the innovation.
Yeah, all great points, Disco. I think we've hit the Bitcoin ETF from 37 angles, but you can't finish a section if you're going to talk about the Bitcoin ETF. Now, of course, everybody's like, ETH next, and Larry Fink has been going on, Squawk Box and all the shows, and sometimes, what is it like? An enemy of my enemy is kind of my friend. And, not saying Larry is an enemy, but it's like, if Larry wants to talk about ETH and the tokenization of everything, I love his vagaries. Like, is he talking about the tokenization of pickles because they go down the assembly line, or is he talking about real estate? Is he talking about, but he's oversimplifying it, but obviously he's speaking to the masses. So, bring that narrative on. And, I have been on record. I'm more pessimistic, especially in the next 4 months, on an ETH ETF, but who knows, with this Coinbase lawsuit that's literally going on as we speak, it sounds like the judge is kind of saying like, hey, Coinbase, you prepared a really good statement.
You did your work.
You to understand this, and basically said to the SEC, like, you've done nothing. Like, step up. What's your argument here? So, and the reason I bring that up is because for ETH, I feel like we know that Gensler is personally, which we don't get to see that very often, but from the MIT days, we know he was into Bitcoin. I assume maybe ETH, but we know he was into Bitcoin. ETH to me feels a little harder to get because of staking and securities. But maybe with the XRP lawsuit and with Coinbase here and with all these lawsuits and the SEC just getting their asses handed to them over and over and losing these things and not really even having a good case, maybe the other ETFs, whether it's ETH or Solana, maybe those are foregone conclusions. But to me, I welcome it. I'll balance my portfolio and my retirement account just like I do in my crypto account. I'm a big fan of Bitcoin and I'm a big fan of ETH. And honestly, if you ask me which my favorite is, I know you're supposed to be a one-chain maxi now, but I love them both. And even on the art side, like I'm finding all these great on-chain ETH things, you know, that I had overlooked because I got into ordinals, which the whole narrative is on-chain. ETH actually, as the world's supercomputer, is doing super cool stuff. So bringing ETH as an ETF with a deflationary asset is, especially if they could actually give a dividend based on staking. Now, as my personal nodes and my validators, and the more that stake, the more my percentage goes down. So I'll be frowny face there, but from a ETF TradFi asset, that's a huge win. Can you imagine not only having an ETH ETF, but it just naturally goes up like 2-3% a year because of the ETF is staking? I mean, that'd be beautiful.
Well, I think, you know, the big quote, and it doesn't take much, as we've kind of learned from Mr. Fink, is he's quoted as saying, "I see value in having an Ethereum ETF." That's pretty basic, but that statement alone could mean quite a bit and move some mountains. The other thing to kind of think about is maybe it won't look like the Bitcoin approval process. Maybe there's a way to do it as just like a spot ETF and kind of disregard the staking elements of it in the beginning, and then maybe they start figuring out how to incorporate staking into a model and kind of adjusting it that way. Because the thing that keeps coming back to me is there's very few things that excite kind of these TradFi guys more than what essentially staking would be, you know, so getting that return and being able to kind of leverage it from that side. So there's probably going to be a pretty significant charge and push towards getting that first kind of level through of some sort where Ethereum has an ETF, and then maybe it becomes more sophisticated as it isn't as simple as it's a store of value or it's digital gold. Like that was super easy to kind of get people to understand the notion of and everything.
The mental model, sure.
Yeah, like it was an easy kind of talking point. And I think that I'm certain that they'll focus on, you know, kind of the narrative and the story and kind of the pitch before we get into these, you know, the approvals in earnest in May. And maybe it doesn't happen in May. Maybe it happens later in the year or something like that. But I think that when you have Mr. Fink say, "I see value in an Ethereum ETF," and going on a road show, and he's doing that a week after Bitcoin got it, you know, so it's kind of like,
he seems to get what he wants, Disco. I see your point there.
Yeah.
I mean, think about this. Like, go ahead. Finish your point.
No. I'm
so
just
let's
saying
say there's 11 ETFs, and let's say there's 11 Ethereum ETFs. My only addition to what you say before you finish is, if it's legal to do legal, some of them will stake. I mean, you're basically saying I'm giving you 3% on top. So the ones that don't, it's just like GBTC with their 1.5% fee. Eventually, I don't know where the spigot will stop, but eventually anyone who's smart will get out of there. That, like, their number should be zero unless you don't care about 1.5% of your money, which is ridiculous. But ETH is the same thing. If anybody offers staking because they legally can, they're going to figure it out, because having an ETF with a kicker is like having your cake and eating it too. And that's why ETH, the deflationary asset, is such an invaluable investment medium in my opinion.
It goes from the narrative of the fixed amount, right? Like the Bitcoin 21 million, to now introducing deflationary in terms of the supply, and then the element of getting return on it from staking. It's just like, they're not going to like come this far and then, kind of give up on this. Like, I think it'll get a really big push. And the fact that the big player, days after the big win is already positioning for the next one means that there's a strategy, and it makes you pretty bullish about where that's going to go, which we did see the reaction in price from the Ethereum side of things more so than Bitcoin. And we saw that it pumped and it moved up. And I just think that that's probably a precursor to where things are going to head.
That's a great point. And another thing to think with an ETH ETF coming live, whereas GBTC already had 26 billion in this kind of vehicle, on the ETH side, I don't know what the number is, but it's tiny. So it never took off like the Bitcoin one did. So any of that money would probably be new inflows and money coming in. And remember, when all of this went live, Bitcoin went down, but what we saw, Solana's been pumping for 3 months. It was kind of odd. It was like the 1 and the 3 just went on the news of the Bitcoin ETF. Solana was like the people degenning lower on the scale. More NFT stuff was going on Solana than ever before. And ETH just got pretty much sidestepped and ignored. But interestingly, when the Bitcoin ETF got approved in around that week, even a week prior, right, ETH started... It's almost like once everyone knew it was a foregone conclusion, ETH started making its move. And now it's at 25, so it's not like it's at 4,000 again, but it made its move, and it's coming up, and it's saying, we were down, not out. I think costs, gas fees on the chain, they get expensive. So degens, a lot more are going to Solana for those super cheap fast transaction fees. But at the end of the day, I stand by that ETH is right now the preeminent world secure supercomputer, and it's got an underlying asset that's deflationary. It's awesome.
Do you know what's really awesome about, just to kind of look at it from this lens, is you're kind of seeing the equivalency to IPOs for these different program or protocols, right? And what's brilliant now is that it's not just, insider VC people or whatever it is who are getting their shares or their opportunities to get in on the IPOs. And I go back to Facebook, and, there was a lot of buzz on, is this stock going to really do that well? Are they going to figure out how to monetize? Well, we've seen that they figured out how to monetize to a filthy degree, if we're frank about it.
Yeah.
But I remember
monetize on your information, your private information.
Yeah. But I remember that, I remember trying to get access to that IPO, and I was able to get, a couple hundred shares when it came out. And then I was getting clowned on by people that I was talking to because it dipped right after the IPO. Like, it went down significantly, and it kind of stayed down for, maybe 6 months or so, and then it
was a while. I bought day one as well, and I never, to this day, even as annoyed I am as Facebook, I have held and continue your story. But I'm in the same boat as you, because I was like, hey, wait, and tell them the happy ending.
Well, my little story on it was always just, well, they have 1 billion users, so that's got to be worth something, and this hasn't been available to have, exposure to, and I liken it to, we're almost looking at a potential IPO season for cryptocurrencies. So Bitcoin is, kind of muddling through right now. It's choppy, as you say. The GBTC is in play, but Ethereum, if this gets the same racket and it happens, at the end of second quarter, I think that it would be more of a potential upside, because it's really never been touched before. It's completely clean, completely clean drinking water when you're looking at that. And then there's no reason, if Ethereum gets through, who's next and how that kind of goes and rolls. And as a retail investor, like, that's pretty exciting to be able to see this potentially happening for for this next cycle.
Yeah, it is. And interestingly, the further down the ladder you go, so obviously it would probably be Solana after that, or maybe XRP or Cardano. But if those go live, you're going from an $900 billion market cap with Bitcoin. Then ETH is number 2 at 3 or 400 billion or 500 billion, whatever it is, it kind of almost cuts in half to Ethereum, but then below that, it kind of cuts in half again and again and again. At some point, you make these things live with, let's say it's $100 billion asset, bigger whales could manipulate it much more. So just something to think about. I probably would not, maybe Solana, maybe I would, just as like a little degen hedge. I still consider that in the speculative degen chains, whereas Ethereum and Bitcoin, I would consider personally more stable long-term investments and hedges against inflation. But the more options people have, the merrier. And if I have to sign, and if America citizens have to sign a waiver to say they're super aggressive traders to get it, fine, go for it. Give me more options, and I can always opt not to buy it too.
And it'll be this. I'm not sure where this thought's coming from or where it's going to go, but if you start opening up the market for people to be able to get involved and support, different chains, maybe it could lead to less tribalism amongst kind of the crypto Twitter and the insiders, because you'd have bigger things being able to influence it. I know. I'm just hopeful. It's the beginning of the year, I'm looking at a brave new world. Okay.
I don't see it. It's funny because like Bitcoiners Bitcoiners think everything's a shitcoin, right? And then Ethereans think Solana's a shitcoin, and it's like, and on and on. And Solana's trying to get legitimacy from Ethereum, and they've had a lot of people go and do degen NFT stuff on both. And Bitcoin still thinks everything's just, Peter McCormack still calls everything just, if it's not Bitcoin, it's a shitcoin, and even ordinals on Bitcoin. It's like, it's so silly how they do it. But that's why I think in our show, you and I were doing gut checks. Like it was, in hindsight, now that Solana's kind of cooled down a little and is just hovering at that 100 range, it was hard to sit 100% in ETH. Let's put Bitcoin aside for a second and watch Solana do a 4X like it. And I think that's why Bankless got they got FOMO-y. I don't know if we got FOMO-y, but it was almost capitulation. I'm like, I'm not throwing big bags at it, but I'm going to throw some bags at it. Like, this feels like momentum. And, I caught the tail end of it, but as of today, I'm up like 30 or 40%. Like, I caught a nice little tail end. And my goal is to set up another validator in the next, 3 months or so. So I could come out and go to the validator, or keep Sol and just admit like, it's a degen bag, but let it ride.
In terms of degen bags, it's not a really Jenny bag. Like, there's
it's not a DGOT or some garbage like that.
Yeah. There's a lot.
Sorry, I said it.
There's a lot of different.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different levels to the elevator, sir. So there's different places that things could go.
That's true.
All right. Well, we'll obviously keep an eye and keep everybody updated on, any developments from the Ethereum side of things. And, it's been an interesting show so far, but we always like to kind of look a little bit back in the rearview mirror and see if things that we covered, weeks ago are starting to pop back up or have any follow-ups or tails. And I think that one of the things that we had an offline text about, really, and it goes back to this notion of, what kind of investor or what kind of collector do you want to be, right? And, we did, and you kind of opened my eyes a lot to the varying elements of, how on-chain certain things are stored and how pure, different collections are from these different perspectives, and kind of putting your own kind of internal metrics in place as to how you value different projects and how they're put together. And you were telling me that you kind of have been going a little bit more down this more on-chain purity side of things, and kind of learned some stuff in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny because you say, like, I educated you on that. I educated myself on it too. Like I said, I've been in crypto since 2015, NFTs only since 2020. I think it was the end of 22. So I missed the original autoglyphs and CryptoPunk stuff like that. I was unfortunately a year late, but it took me as much as I understood about underlying cryptocurrencies, especially Bitcoin and ETH, I did not know a lot about that, about NFTs. I by the time we had that show, which was like show 4 or 5, you guys should definitely check it out.
Right.
It goes all into NFTs and Bitcoin ordinals and really how securely your stuff is storaged. And to me, that was one of the more fascinating deep dives because I learned a lot and it just solidified what I believe, which is, to me, like, I want to invest for 100 years. And obviously I'm not going to be alive for the next 100 years, but hopefully grandkids or nieces or nephews or someone's going to take over my 1977 Earl Campbell football card collection. Right. So my thing is like, what do I know or what do I think is going to be around? Well, I think Bitcoin's going to be around. I think ETH is going to be around. And so the more I research, the more I go on chain. I want to dive in. This may even be separated out into a separate show, and I'm kind of talking how the sausage gets made, but let me show you what I'm thinking here. I should have saved this to the end, but who cares? I can just filter any of this stuff out. But I should have told you that too. So Inscription 3491 is Azuki, 6105. So I don't even know what my Azuki number is anymore, but I have one Azuki left. In the news, Azuki has been doing all sorts of stuff. On their website, they have collector profiles. Let's see if I can pull it up real quick while I'm talking. But basically, they've kind of... Yeah, I knew it autofill. I was lucky. I knew they've upped their game for sure. And a lot of what we've been saying, from show 1, they blew it with the elementals drop. They should have had a whole, at least, announcement for the pipeline of making story. So I've sold all but one of my Azuki. I've got 2 beans left. So now there's... Basically, they've already had these badges and they had these emblems. So you get an emblem for having an Azuki, for having a beans, for having a Bobu, for getting an ambush piece of clothing, beans, an element. Like there's all sorts of them. If you have a spirit, you get one. But now they've added this thing like, what's your overall score to get to like this legend stat? It's called the order. So the more I buy, the more this cool little token gets more rainbowy and glowy and it's cool. I mean, Azuki is known for its artwork and I love it. So Azuki is on IPFS. It's kind of it's not on chain, but it's on, we'll call it Web3 secure-ish storage. It's not as good as Arweave in my opinion, but it's good, right? So, but I'm really going fully on chain. So I'm going to ask your opinion to you in the audience, what you would do. So to me, this whole thing of a website that looks really nice to increase my score. So if I want to increase my score up to these other levels, which I assume at the parties you and I went to in Vegas, they're in Hong Kong, they're all over the world, we would maybe get more VIP treatment if I can get to the top. To get to the top, I assume would cost me probably 20 or 30 or maybe even 40 Ethereum. And I guess to me, you put that back in dollar terms, what was that, 85, 100 grand? Like, no, that's not going to happen. And to me, this is a closed ecosystem, self-created flywheel. This is to me putting a collar on your dog with a stick dangling in front of him with a carrot on the stick. To me, like, what incentive at all? You and I both saw the people with the most sought after Azuki, which are the spirits, got their own box at this party. Otherwise, beans, elementals, everybody was invited. So, because they don't want to be exclusive. So how do you, to me, none of this adds up. I am excited for their anime, but here's my question I'm posing to you. So I'm getting more and more into this on-chain stuff. This Suzuki I could probably sell for, let's just say 7 ETH, right? So I could sell this for 7 Ethereum. I could sell these 2 beans, probably get 1 ETH total for both. So that'd be 8 ETH. I'm getting into all this on-chain stuff. So I've got some options here. I could sell this and actually get the 8 ETH and get into more things like the Fingerprints DAO, which is basically all about empowering on-chain art. So they do a whole curation with people, names you recognize, Def Beef, Plutonium, Chain Left. I just bought his Chaos Roads, all on chain, and they're really pushing the limits. It's mostly Ethereum, but even some of the newer ones in the studio, or is on Ordinals. Yeah. So Perceptrons is by 3,700 and that whole team, the generative team, and that's on Ordinals, and that's all again on chain. So to be a member of this, you can buy one of their NFTs for about 3 ETH, or you could buy 5,000 prints. And the cool thing is these prints, I think there's like 18 million of them. The number's not huge, or maybe there's only 1 million of them, but the total value of prints equals the total value of their collection. Well, they've got how many? They have 26 autoglyphs. I think the floor of autoglyphs is literally 128 ETH. Best offer 70. I don't even know. Let's just see what the floor is. The floor, if there even is any being sold.
256 ETH.
Yeah, so the floor is 256 ETH. There's only 512 of these. Autoglyphs, for those who don't know, is one of the very first on-chain art on Ethereum. It could have even been first. There might have been experiments before that, but autoglyphs are obviously a grail among grails, and they hold 26 of them. So my point is, for like 3 ETH, I could get in on that, or I could burn this. So I could burn it, lose the money, and worry about the fingerprint stuff later. I'll still get on-chain stuff later, but then I've got inscription 3491, and my whole positioning, which I believe in, is this isn't a negative thing. This is a positive thing. I love Azuki. I love the art. I love the brand, but I don't believe in utility anymore. So this is the first Azuki, and this is the first Azuki. It's the only, there's 3 sub 5K, all were mine. This is the first of the 3 at inscription 3491. For those who don't know, there's probably 43 million inscriptions out there now. This is the first 5,000. It's immutable on chain. I could preserve this art and keep it over here. And basically my whole positioning is love Azuki, love what they're doing, wishing them all the best, but it's time for 3491 to get off the merry-go-round and become the first and only Azuki that is eternal and immutable and for the art, or something like that, you know. And obviously there's positioning there, there's attention, maybe it's done around decentralized dawn in the show or whatever, but that aside, because obviously you're incentivized if that would work for us, what would you do?
That is one of the longest questions that I had to field. Just to give a little space on that, but I think that if you go back to the rewards within their closed ecosystem, no thanks. Like, that is not it's cool looking, I guess, but that's almost like a internal motivator that's not relevant outside of that space at all. Right. And what are you really going to get? So you might get a better booth at a party. I could buy you a VIP spot at the club.
Well, don't look at it that way. Look at it too, like, remember, they announced a huge partnership with one of the biggest ad agencies in the world, Dentsu, which is out of Japan. So very Pacific Rim focused, which is what Azuki has really thrived in building. and
Agreed.
anime with whatever that guy's name is, who I won't pronounce it right anyway. So they're good. They're going to try. I don't know if he's really good at it. From what I hear, he's pretty good. So let's assume they put a decent product out there. So there still is that utility. And for a clean floor PFP, in my opinion, this is definitely one of the coolest ones out there. So in it for the utility and possibly Web 3 canvassing over to Web 2 and becoming way bigger in the anime world, or making a statement and going fully on chain and walking away. So I just wanted to give that extra perspective there, because that's important.
But this is a question that I want to bring up anyhow, which is, how is utility defined in this scenario? So what is the real utility gained by holding this undeniably cool, dope image? Like, it's great imagery. Like, my thing with you would be more that it's emotional, and you kind of feel aligned with this image that they, this art that they produced with the Jordans and everything. And you have a personal affinity and affiliation with it, and it speaks to you from that side of it. But again, define what is the utility that you're getting back by holding it.
Right. Exactly. The utility would be if they can successfully, I think, make a mainstream brand based on, I don't think they're going to do it necessarily with all these beans and plushies. I could be totally wrong. Obviously, now that Yuga with Bored Apes, I think are at 23 ETH right now, which sounds high to people who are new to the space, but they peaked at about 150, 160 ETH. They are hurting and down bad. So that whole playbook, they got diluted over time. The Bored Ape just doesn't have the appeal like it used to, and like the crypto punks kind of have that universal appeal. Azuki, I feel like now they're very innovative in some ways, but they're also drafting. And now I think they're just drafting off Pudgy Penguins, who basically a guy bought Pudgy Penguins out at, when they were at like 1 or 2 ETH, and now they're at 14 ETH. And he put these plushies in Walmart. He took it into an in real life strategy, and people loved that. And all the stuff on the timeline, and granted, people are always going to talk great about their bags, but and when number go up, you're not going to hear much bad stuff, but obviously great move for all those people who are already in it or who moved in. But I think Azuki is now starting to look at them and copy them, at least in some business structure for beans. And then for Azuki, which they should have been doing anime and getting this stuff lined up right when they made that first, tens and tens or $100 million, whatever they made. They should have been lining this stuff immediately for animations and stuff like that.
So here's my take now that I processed it slightly. I feel like this operation, in terms of having more scale within the community and working up the ranks within that community, unfortunately, I don't want to say this, but it kind of feels like it's another representation of the project looking to feed off the pre-existing members of the community, and another way to get people to invest more within their ecosystem without necessarily giving back more than internal status that isn't relevant outside of this website, and it doesn't really give you benefit. When you look at what you were showing with the other side of things, where it's like the art and it's all on chain and all that, like, I just feel like the winds have changed overall. And I think that now that there are these new ways to look at inscriptions, and you got to look at how there's such a finite amount of those really, and how that's all going to impact things as this moves forward. I think the space where you would be more interesting, and it would even give this more life, would be to get outside of just this, kind of internal Azuki garden, and start looking at how you can either display it like you're talking about outside of that, or use it to move into other things that more align with the values that you have as being a 100-year plus collector.
So you would, in summarizing, you would get the ETH, you would sell it, move on, and either join Fingerprints DAO or whatever. Obviously, I'll do what I'll do, or get more on chain art. You're saying move it. You're not suggesting forego the 8 ETH, burn it, and have it live eternally on ordinals as an inscription.
What is the benefit for you as a collector to do that?
Well,
just the statement?
It makes a statement, but it also, if I'm right, sub 5,000, sub 10,000, certainly sub 1,000, which this isn't, ordinals will continue to have value. This is the first one in ordinals. What can be done now with parent-child relationships, I could use this Azuki to document, I could mint a collection as children under this and mint a history of, my history of Azuki and where I jumped off and making this immortal. Or I could do all sorts of things with the parent-child relationship. I could make a little museum of the history of utility. It's just an idea. Yeah. It just dawned on me this morning, but it is, you're right. That's for most people to be like, you're a dipshit. Like if you're out and you're into this other stuff, be the kind of collector you want to be and don't leave money on the table ever. I guess what I'm saying is the only wild card here is if that's the only Azuki that's ever been burned,
especially with the low inscription number, right?
The lowest, right? It's under 5,000, and it's the first Azuki. I checked; it is the first Azuki in the entire ordinals collection. So it's interesting. It's a thought exercise more than anything, right?
Yeah, I'm getting really intrigued with what you were showing before, the fingerprint stuff. And, I just think that one of the things that can screw you in terms of being a new adapter of technology is being tied to something that was a phase before, and I think that we had the, kind of the initial boom with NFTs. And I think this represents, kind of the first gen of kind of success when you have kind of that first class, right, of projects that came through. But I just think once the conditions change and the kind of the currency changes, then you got to just get on board with it, especially if it resonates with you and you understand it. So I think that there's a cool opportunity, and we've been talking about it, about seeing some of these people really put their best foot forward from artistic perspectives and finding the best ways to make them purely, respond to some of the newer qualities that have emerged in terms of, on-chain has definitely become a new metric that people kind of completely ignored in the very beginning. It's just like, I don't know, but I have it.
No. That's where I think I disagree. I think it's an evolution of some collectors. I think because our awareness on this show together went to more on chain. There have been people, this has been going on well before our time, wholly ignored by the main crypto degens. It's just now you've plugged into that because of what we're doing on the show. It's always been there. It's just, in having a crypto punk, I think inevitably leads you there, because all the early crypto punks already knew this because they were there when all this stuff was minting. They're intimate with it, whereas I came and then had to retroactively learn about how important on-chain was to me. But most of the degens out there, like if you hold a DGOD on your Amazon web server, totally centralized, totally at the mercy of DGODs. They could change the art to whatever they want. They could take it down. They could stop paying that AWS bill and it's gone. I mean, that to me is just pure degen stupidity. But, at least this stuff is on IPFS but most people, to my point, are degenning and are looking at PFPs. And I think most people still want to belong to these ever evolving PFP groups, and they want to a lot of people try and ladder up to as high as they can get on a good collection and as high on the food chain of that collection as they can. Not everybody, but I think the loud majority, that is true.
Yeah. I think the notion of, burning and everything, like, it's exciting because it's kind of punk rock, like it feels kind of disruptive and fun from that side of it. But
right.
I'd have to kind of process and think through, what you're giving away or what you're giving up to do that. But it's a compelling thought exercise for sure.
Right. I guess I'll leave with one thought. If the 6501 is burned, that Izuki is burned on Ethereum, and the only existing one is on Bitcoin, assuming Bitcoin has a trajectory of more and more collectors. Obviously, that's an assumption. We don't know if that's true. I think it will be true. Could I sell that to possibly even like a complete maxi, Azuki maxi for a Bitcoin? Could I sell it for more than the value of the ETH? And if I sell the ETH one, is the Bitcoin one worth more or less? Does someone want to hold both? I've tried to sell my Bitcoin. I had another Azuki, and I tried to sell the Ethereum one with the Bitcoin sub 5K. And, this is 4 months ago, nobody they're like, I don't care about the Bitcoin one. I ended up just selling it. I said, fine, I'm keeping the Bitcoin one. Like, screw you. Like, you don't get it then. But they could not have cared less, which surprised me. But that shows you maybe Node Monkeys was the turning point for Bitcoin ordinals. It's certainly, if we look at the volume play, I mean, it's certainly, Bitcoin was actually number 2 to ETH again. Bitcoin, remember, last week was double ETH. So already ETH has overtaken it. But that shows you with Node Monkeys, and then slightly lesser extent, I think it was called Bitcoin Puppets or whatever those things were. But both of those had high volume. That was a huge week for Bitcoin. Ordinals were way over Ethereum, but now Ethereum's back. Bitcoin is still number 2 though to Solana, and Solana is half of Bitcoin. So there's a 3-horse race here for sure on NFTs.
Wow. So what was it to get into what was the entry for the fingerprint thing, the DAO?
It's about, you can either buy an image based off one of their autoglyphs or buy 5,000 print. Either way, it's about 3 to 3.3 ETH as of yesterday.
Okay.
And then, the cool thing is you can talk to other people like that. And then you actually, I think, you get early looks at the new collections. I don't know if I guess if that collection goes up in value, the more people that would want to be in prints, it's a fixed supply. So the value of prints can go up. So it's actually, I think I'm piquing your interest. I can tell by the questions you're asking, but, let's see, Fingerprint DAO prints. It was $1.61 yesterday, $1.60 today. So it doesn't move a ton. The volume is not super high by any means. But if the value of the collection goes up, so does the price of the Fingerprints DAO. So this $1.60 price, based on that, it's a 10 million circulating supply. There it is. So if those autoglyphs go up in value, then the value of the Fingerprints DAO goes up. So it's a pretty interesting, you're making a long-term bet on art. Now all of a sudden I could tell it's, because I know you were an real world art collector before this, and now this is interesting. It's a digital group. You could get burned.
It's phenomenal. Come on. So you can just, all right. So we did
Disco's like, I want in.
So we talked to Nouns and how, Nouns DAO is doing all this stuff. It's fascinating watching some of these different DAOs really be at the freaking, that's what I want to study more and be in the loop on, are these innovative DAO projects. Cause that's just, the other ones, the other collections and stuff, it's like they're kind of trying to mimic IRL stuff to Web3 and find a way to kind of make that kind of work together. Whereas this just makes so much more sense of being, native and understanding what it is. So I'm fascinated by, I would go all on this, like not financial advice, but I think that's such an interesting, and if they're already tied into like real OG stuff like autoglyphs and all that, like, come on, I can't believe more people aren't talking about this.
Yeah, I'd have to look if you actually, like, if they dissolved, if you'd own a piece of those. I think it is fractional. I'd have to check, but yeah, it's the on-chain stuff is interesting. So I've really been using Fingerprints as my barometer now. It's kind of cool because, I came to my own conclusions and became an on-chain kind of art maxi. And then with Fingerprints, I'm like, this is like the guidebook. And granted, they, have their own studio to curate new artists to do this kind of stuff. But like Def Beef stuff is awesome. Terraform's Math Castles, we won't even get into it in this show. That's the stuff I'm really looking at. But it's multi-layered. It's on so many different levels. Like it's cool. I'll tell you about it offline, but we'll probably do a deep dive show on it. That's how fascinating it is. Loot you've heard of, but I actually bought these receipts. Super cool. So basically, I don't know why I fell in love with this one, but with receipts, you basically spend an amount of ETH. That amount of ETH. Then, so this is called receipt 0.0372 ETH. That person spent 0.0372 ETH on, so Fingerprints collection did. That's what they spent on it. And then you get this receipt. Let me try and make it bigger for you. I think, there we go. So basically, so this is all on chain too, mind you. This receipt was made by, so it's obviously the Fingerprint DAO, ETH, one of their wallets. Here's the value. Here were the gas fees right here. Here's the total. So
it's so awesome.
Yeah, probably seems a little silly, but the cool thing is if I transfer to you or if I sell to you this, it then the receipt in real time on the chain updates to show that you were made by you and that it was transferred to me. So just super cool stuff. Like, and it's, never expect to get out what you put into something, but I actually bought, you can only spend, so this one's 0.042. The minimum you can spend now, I think they're at like 0.55. It's open. You can go mint one. So if you have 0.057 ETH, I think you could go mint one. So I minted 0.08 ETH. I wanted to pick a number that I loved. And then I saw one for 0.04 ETH. And I'm like, 0.04 is half of 0.08. I'll take there's and plus those are factors of I was going to show you my collection, but one receipt's orange. So it's just interesting. And the fact that it's still open, I wanted to share with you when I got it. Cause I'm like, for like $100, you can get this on chain thing that, it's always going to be open, but there's only been 500 minted because, I know you're saying everything's going on chain, but that's what I'm here to tell you is most people, at least for now, don't care about this. I guess I just feel like from a curation long-term standpoint, that's where it gets interesting.
I think when I mean everything, I think I might mean like myself and you.
Us. Yeah. Us.
Yeah. Everybody, doing this. You're right about that side of it. But I've been in search of something that lines up with just the whole purity of art and, quality curation and being able to kind of go in on stuff that's unique and is pushing the levels and isn't just, a regurgitation of things we've seen before. Did this kind of start with Chaos Roads for you into the Fingerprints? Was that kind of the gateway?
Yeah, I didn't even know it, but the curation team, Shane Left is actually on the curation team. I didn't know that. No, somebody posted, I said, no, dude, all the interesting stuff is going on in ordinals right now. And he's like, dude, go look at Chaos Roads. And then this happened again with Terraform's Math Castles, which is one of the big ones in their collection. Basically, somebody was like, no, ordinals is doing with all this recursive and all these different image ways of handling it. It's all on chain. Like, that's the most interesting stuff. And this guy's like, you obviously haven't deep dived down into terraforms. And I was like, to me, that's just a challenge. I'm like, I can deep dive. So I looked and then that guy, the ordinals guy, Danny Huep, who's the founder of On-Chain Monkeys, which was one of the first recursive collections. He had the founder, I think it's 0113, that's his Twitter handle, on a Spaces, and I just happened to be, before I went to bed, I just happened to look and I saw, I'm like, oh, so he had him on like that night, and listening to this guy talk, who made Math Castles, I was like, oh yeah, I'm so in. Like, this on-chain stuff is genius. So that was the evolution. It's just another deep dive, another day, another deep dive, right?
Yeah, but it's another example of curating your input and your, kind of things that you're exposed to. And, I know that when you look at, people want followers or they want, this or that, but it's like, you really want to work hard to make sure that the information and the discussions that you're privy to or that you're going to further aren't just, as we talk about these influencers, pushing, XYZ project for whatever reason. So for you, I know that if you're going to come across somebody who's then going to do a space and is going to get you more intrigued with the depth of, kind of the thought and purpose behind how things were executed, like that's just right up the alley. Right. So
Yeah.
you really can kind of help to define what takes up space in your mind by being more, it kind of goes back to the watch, the Apple Watch and all that, but being
Right.
more kind of, disciplined in terms of what you consume and put your time and mind towards.
Yeah, for sure. So whether that resonates with the rest of the market, remains to be seen. Obviously, I don't want to, when the market zigs, hopefully we're ahead of the curve. We're not FOMOing in and we're zagging, but as doing a show, like now we are getting into the nether niches of what can be done. But to me, it seems like the more you like on-chain art, the more you understand the underpinning fundamentals of why, I hate to say blockchain technologies, that's something Jamie Dimon would say, but why blockchains and the big cryptocurrency chains are so important and immutable to us kind of moving forward, hopefully for centuries.
Yeah. Kind of a change in pace, but it is kind of a follow-up to, or it is definitely a follow-up to something that we've covered related to this, is over your, I always get this wrong, but over your right shoulder, for folks who are looking at the video feed, there is a new piece that we hadn't seen before, and I believe it is fully on chain, or that was part of the delay in getting it to come out. But we're talking about the certificates for the completion of the unit class that we took, that was focused on, kind of one of the first online blockchain classes, if I'm correct.
Yeah, so you were in that class with me as well, and we made a whole bunch of pals from that class. So in fall of 2022, Unique out of Cyprus, Greece, right, had a great class. And we've been harping a little in the last couple shows, like, hey, where's our certificate of completion? Yeah. And it took a whole year for 6529 and the artist behind it, 6529er, and there was one other big artist behind it. But yeah, they rewrote smart contracts because he's an on-chain maxi too, and all of this is on-chain. Interestingly, I did go into the code, and there is an Arweave link to this art piece behind me, so I don't know if everything is on chain or if just the text of the certificate's on chain. Here, you can talk or ask questions. I'm going to flip the screen and then we can see, because I have this is the actual artwork, but the PFP is kind of, or the art is kind of cool. It comes as the actual artwork, but it also has the certificate saying Chicago X, my ETH handle. You have completed this course with your score. I got an 89. If I got a 90 and above, I looked at them all. You get purple in it, and I love the color purple, so I'm a little bummed that I didn't get 2 points higher. I think green and red is more in the 80s, like the B range. So just real interesting, pretty piece. I'm going to try and get the other part of the set.
I wish I got 3 more points knowing that you were 2 points higher than me on that. And then that would have put me in the 90 category as well. But I didn't, at the time, I didn't really realize my competitive spirit probably would have been going a little harder on the test had I known that it really was going to be like inscribed on the certificate, and that, I would have liked to have aced it looking back on it, but I'll take my 87 or 86 or whatever it was.
Yeah, I will say, did I study before? I guess I didn't fully study before. And when we were in those classes, it's not like, because a lot of it was repetitive, at least some of it was, but that test was actually really hard, but it was really smart how they did it. Because they basically said the thing that beat into my brain, although I don't have the number in front of me, is there's a certain amount of money, like if you do an NFT collection or anything on chain, and it has to do with actual real life laws that you can collect from people before the big KYC vampires come out. And I feel like there was a $10 million hurdle and a $25 million hurdle. I'd have to check the numbers, but again, they made it, they asked tough questions, and I actually can say I learned something. And I guess coming full circle with this whole conversation, you asked like, well, was Chaos Roads what got you into on-chain stuff? And I know, I think the seeds were planted way before with the CryptoPunk, but also with this class, because they talked about the importance of on-chain. They didn't harp a ton, I guess. Like, I don't know if they did. You'd think they would have done a whole one on storage, and maybe they did, but I don't think they did. They touched on it, but I know on-chain was important to them. So I think through osmosis, that also bled through to us as well.
And just cheers to 6529 for, I'm sure there was a little bit of pressure to move it quicker and to, get it distributed and everything like that. But, they stuck to the core principles of it and delivered that. So, it took us a little bit longer, and, everyone's antsy and grabby and like, where is it? Where is it? And I think you'll stand the test of time to be able to, hold something that was, done kind of the right way and true to kind of the overall spirit. So I'm excited to have it. And I do think the art's kind of cool actually, but now you got me all purple FOMO'd. So I don't know what I can do.
I don't know. Someone was trying to sell theirs for 3 ETH. There's either 250 or there's like 500, but whatever the number is, it's a very low number who minted it. And the unique thing here is that Unique University I guess they've actually minted certificates before on Ethereum, and they said even Bitcoin since 2014. I'd have to look more into that, but this is the first one that is truly on chain, which I think is super cool. So this is a keepsake. I don't know if there'll ever be a market for these. I almost was tempted to take the class twice and pay the 0.3 ETH test taking fee just to have one that I could sell, and maybe that would have proved to be prescient, maybe not. I know that if down the line I knew this was the first one, I would I don't know if I wouldn't pay 3 ETH or maybe even an ETH, but to me this is important because it tells you that learning something and getting certified does not have to be a diploma that's stored in some basement of some school that you have to call to get the academic records of. It's a certificate. It's on chain. Obviously you can buy a certificate off someone else, and with the whole, soul bound where it can't move addresses, let's say your address gets hacked. That isn't necessarily perfect either, but I think on-chain certificates are one of those no-brainer use cases for the future of learning for future generations.
Well, think of it just from a MBA perspective, right? So you're going to spend, tens of thousands of dollars for a master's in business, and you're going to end up with a paper diploma at the end that's going to be in a little folder that maybe you're pretentious and you want to flash it behind you all the time for your office, but
No,
for the most part, it's just going to be like in a shelf somewhere that you're never going to see. So having it be more dynamic and actually be there is obviously where things have to head. Like, these paper certificates mean nothing, and it's ridiculous. And I thought the most brilliant part, to your point, was that class was available. I think it was no charge, right? Or if it
was free really for everybody to use. I think you had to mint I believe to get access into the on cyber servers, you had to mint the original pass. I think it was free to mint, but there was a gas fee. So, and I believe once they started, there were so many people in all those mirrored servers. I think they realized I think they stopped gatekeeping right away. So yes, in essence, you didn't have to mint that. It was free. And that's another cool thing. We have that original certificate. I think that minting for that original plaque,
you're right.
So that closed. I think only a couple grand of those were even minted. So it's just, to me, this is a part of history. We're a part of this early history of, the big ones are obviously money for crypto, but I think proof of who you are and certification and diploma, whatever you want to call that category, I'd put that in the top 4 or 5 use cases. Because when you really break it down, especially if you listen to Pollyanna or Polina, whatever you call them, like, he's saying there's 3 use cases, which is proof of identity, money, and I don't want to put you on the spot. Do you remember the third big one?
Ownership, or?
Yeah, maybe it's ownership. I thought that was
I would have thought
identity, but yeah, maybe that's your proof of owner. Yeah, you're right. Proof of ownership of
maybe
art, or maybe of public lands. I think he's saying those are the biggest ones. Anyway, I would say that passing classes and skills, obviously we've been in the crypto space a while, but if you and I, let's say Decentralized Dawn was hiring, I mean, who would you hire? A kid out of college who took Bitcoin classes, or if someone had this certificate, I mean, all things else being equal, of course, and they had the certificate, it's a no-brainer. Be like, you on your own accord got the certificate, and whether you went to classes or not doesn't matter to me. You took the test and you've got it.
Yeah. And you're right. The test wasn't easy, and it just shows it's just so in line with the spirit of, kind of disruption through utilizing decentralization. And like, that's what's so cool about it, right? It's like you forego the existing university parameters and overpaying for whatever it may be, and found a more efficient way to end up with a better net result. And if you're interested in this space, it's very, aligned with your understanding of how things can work. So it's a really good point. And I think that I'm excited about the other thing. It was called the Unique Meta Pass or something, the thing you had to get in the beginning. I remember, just to register. So, wow. I don't know, man. I want to get into this fingerprint stuff. Like,
I could tell the light bulb was definitely going off with that one.
Yeah, the lure has been set for me on that. So I want to do some post show investigating and kind of take a look at all that stuff.
Yeah, maybe we join it together.
Yeah, I think it'd be really fun. Yeah, I don't know. I think that there's one thing I wanted to talk about really quick, and it was just kind of a quick follow up from when we did
got all day, dude. We got all day.
Well, we've been going a little bit, but something that was interesting is Blau, who started Royal. He in Royal, for those of you who don't remember or are not in the mix, it's a platform where you're able to purchase percentages of royalties from musical production, from songs, basically. So you can kind of back an artist and their song and get paid royalties. So that notion to me is still just really, really fascinating. And I'm really excited about where that could end up going. But what was cool was they dropped this week an opportunity for you to be able to utilize a catalog of AI music. And what's been coming out of that that's really interesting is people are using this AI music catalog to create their own music and then turning around and selling it and minting it on different music exchanges and generating revenue. So it's pretty early. It's very kind of next step, next level, but seeing some of this start happening where you can buy into a catalog of AI music, then utilize that to create new content, and then you own the rights to that. You are then able to turn around and market and sell that and generate your own revenue. That like is mind blowing for anyone who's spent any time in the music industry. And it shows that we are just sitting down to breakfast in terms of seeing how AI can fuse with blockchain to really kind of disrupt and change how we look at the kind of the barriers to being able to produce and sell and create music. So those of you that are interested, take a look. It's called 3DM is the model, the AI model that they developed with Royal, and I'm going to get my hands on.
So there's only 333 total. How come zero? Nobody's bought one yet? Or are they not available? Maybe they're not. They haven't come out yet.
I think you have to. No, I think you have to get them on secondary now.
Oh, these have already sold.
Yeah, so they dropped it on his birthday, I think.
Okay.
But I've been seeing people
interesting.
There's been people talking about the tracks that they've created utilizing this AI music have then turned into things that they've been able to monetize, turn around and flip and sell and mint on like Sound XYZ and stuff. So there's been a lot of kind of negative stuff going on about, where's everything going with music NFTs and stuff, but being able to see this actual integration come to life has been pretty interesting to watch.
Yeah, for sure. I'm tempted to get one of those. I like that 333 have been made, but so have you tinkered with it yet, or you haven't gotten one yet?
No, I haven't gotten around to it because we had a big cold snap and it kind of really messed up my days with kids not going to school and things from that perspective. So it's on my whiteboard to get into. So more to follow on that once I actually join it and get involved and do that. But we have to talk about people that are pushing some of the newer innovations and fusing kind of the capabilities of blockchain with, some of the AI side of it. And more importantly, being able to take it and make more people be able to have, an impact and outputs within, creativity and the music industry space, as opposed to having to go through all the barricades and gatekeepers that we know are in place.
Yeah, that's any creative outlets like that I think are cool, and music is kind of ignored in the NFT space. It's not ignored, it's just such its own sub niche that's so small and hopefully growing, and hopefully not growing with too much input from the big labels. But Disco and I were talking before the show, it's just the most disheartening thing in this whole element of music is that the libraries of all the big collections are owned by 3 or 4 companies, and then the touring is owned by one company, Live Nation basically, and by the way, they own Ticketmaster too. So it just we came up with a solution though in 3 generations, when all the old music is it's played, but the old libraries are owned. Everybody from here on forth for the next 100 years just doesn't get a label, and they can go online. It's very decentralized, and then all the libraries are owned by them, or however they hooked it up with, having people split ownership with them with these new kind of decentralized models. That is in a perfect world, obviously. How that plays out, who knows?
Was that the genesis of a new DAO?
It could be. It could be. I don't know if that's one I would start. You can start it, and then I'll be your founding member. But you're way more knowledgeable and into music, at least from that side of it, from the management side, than I am. But it's interesting.
Side note for you.
Yeah.
I did see this morning that for the first time ever, Air is going to play Moon Safari live front to back for a handful of dates in February, and I just saw that news today. So that's something to put on the calendar if they do come stateside.
Really? So they haven't announced the locations yet?
Well, they have like 6 dates in Europe that they announced, but the thinking is they would probably take it on the road and come over to the United States as well.
And that's all they're going to come in February. You're saying, then maybe they'll do the US this summer or something.
Yeah, that's what I would think, because the dates are in, I think it's some in Berlin, some in London. And I just saw it early this morning that they announced it. So they've never played, apparently they've never done it, the full album live all the way through. So I'm glad they picked that one, frankly.
I would take my nephew for sure. But if Air comes to the States, obviously if they're in your neck of the woods, I'll just come out there. But it's funny because Air is definitely, obviously it's one of my favorite bands, and that is probably my top 3 albums, probably top 2, possibly my favorite. But Air is not the greatest live band. I said it's out there. Like the Beta Band, who was to me almost not an offshoot of Air, but it was in that same era where you and your little bro and I were early on all that stuff, and that whole kind of French, what do you call that? Like slow tempo scene or whatever it's called. But seeing them live, tempo. I wasn't super impressed with them live. I almost felt like they were nervous or something, and they don't go longer than the song. They don't really jam, which you think like that music you could jam for a while, but maybe some of those songs 7 or 8 minutes, maybe that's as long as they would want. Now Moon Safari, I would see that in a heartbeat, but it's just interesting. You get bands like the Beta Band who live, they're literally switching instruments in the middle of songs like that's a band I've always been shocked that never made it bigger, but it was a very unique style. And I think when they had that one shot with
Dry the Rain.
Well, Dry the Rain was their hit from the movie the Chicago Record Music Store with Cusack and Jack Black. High Fidelity, I believe. That song, I think, was made popular by that movie to a subset of us. But when they had their big chance, their big hit on that album was Squares, and the song was flat. It was kind of lame, and that album was good, but it wasn't as good as their old stuff. So I feel like they had their shot, and then that album wasn't great. And I feel like music had also moved on by that point too.
Yeah, that's very true.
But if you guys want to go old collection, Beta Band, who Disco got me into, as well as Air, is a great listen, especially their early stuff like the 3 EPs. And I don't even know the names of the other albums. But
where do you think Beta Band were formed?
Oh, I'm trying to think of their accents. Denver?
No, as a proud Scot, they are Scottish.
Really? Oh,
Yeah,
I didn't know that. Okay. Oh, how cool. I did not know I didn't. And then it's like Scots, the Southern culture on the Skids. Now that is a fun band where you do heavy listening, but it's so like catchy and poppy that like you go heavy on them for like 4 months and you're like, I like the Scots. And now I continue on.
Yeah,
with my
I'll
life.
come back to it. Yeah.
But
totally.
dirt track date. Got me a dirt track date. Demolition starts at 8. They all drive at a figure 8. I got me a demolition date. It's that's one of my favorites. Anyway, we digress. Is there any other follow-up stuff? There's so many more. I think we hit the best and the biggest.
I think that as I say, like I'm really it was interesting talking about, kind of the news, but I really enjoyed kind of going more on the development journey of, kind of iterating on new things that provide value or resonate with you, and seeing where that road kind of goes and takes us. And, looking at, just talking about the Fingerprints DAO and looking at that and looking at the Chaos Roads and looking at, even seeing, how Royal's trying to do things differently and in new ways. Like, I think that's one of the coolest parts about being involved in this show, is just kind of getting tapped into things that once the show's over, I have a little reading list of things to go into and look in and explore more. So it kind of changes my priorities, after show. Like, it'll be new things that I want to kind of dig into for the end of the week. And then what's beautiful is then we can build on it and talk about it next week's show. So I really enjoyed learning about some of the stuff we talked about today. And I think from a bigger picture perspective, it'd be really cool to see, a judge make a slap at the SEC and kind of change things from that macro perspective. But the bottom line is there's just so much ingenuity and so many intelligent folks that are building and developing things in this space that there's just so many reasons to be intrigued and excited. And I think that we're definitely on the right track to be able to be involved with significant disruption and improvement of so many different elements of life that I just really feel gratitude to be able to do this show and be able to learn more and talk about these items.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, the feeling is definitely mutual. My something good for the week would have to be snow. So we've had a pretty cold winter here, but we've had no snow until like a week ago, and it just dumped. I woke up that they canceled school and the kids, I'm like, it's going to snow a half an inch and be like 28 degrees. Like, we went to school in that, and it actually did. We probably got 14 inches or something. It was huge. I think I ran the snow blower up and down the driveway 5 times in 2 days, and it got so cold so fast. I still couldn't stay ahead of it. But just having the snow, the sun hits the snow, makes everything brighter, and it just makes getting in the Midwest through the long winters way more tolerable if we can have that clean white snow for January and most of February.
I would jump on that, but I would probably take it a slight step further in terms of the enjoyment of snow, because it opens up recreational opportunities that are pretty fun if you're in a different part of the country. So I know that my wife is pretty much obsessed with monitoring snow counts at various ski resorts and stuff like that. So I'll probably be dragged up there in the next week or so just to take advantage of it. But you're right, it's a beautiful upside to just, it's just when it's gray and cold and there's no snow, like, that can get to you. But the snow really kind of just is the filter that makes it beautiful.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Do we just have the disclaimer, or do we want to share any of this other stuff? I think we've hit the meatiest of meat. Right?
I think I'm ready for the disclaimer. I think I'm ready to let folks know that this show is, for entertainment purposes only. Nothing that we're saying should be construed as financial advice. We're just trying to learn more along this path and journey, and we appreciate you being involved. And as always, if you could hit the subscribe button, or you can, smash the like, or whatever it may be. And more importantly, if you want to make comments or suggestions, we want to be a two-way entity and a two-way street. So feedback would be considered a gift, and we'd love to, include any new ideas or thoughts that you guys may have. But again, thanks for spending some time with us, and we look forward to putting on the headphones and doing it again soon.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. Until next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.